The fact certain characters seem to shrug off devastating moments absurdly fast, legendary figures utter rather silly dialogue, and ridiculously cool villains are dispatched in the most underwhelming way imaginable obviously didn't completely ruin the Star Wars original trilogy. But these moments did still leave viewers wondering how these otherwise talented filmmakers could trip up like they did. So I'm Gareth, this is What Culture's Star Wars, and here are the 9 dumbest things in the Star Wars original trilogy. Number 9. Luke and Leia barely acknowledge some pretty devastating losses. In the wake of his new mentor Obi-Wan Kenobi suddenly being struck down by the big bad force in the galaxy known as Darth Vader, Luke Skywalker can be found taking a second to mourn the loss of old Ben in Episode 4 A New Hope. And Leia Organa even stops by to console her secret twin brother. It's all very touching. However, it does bring into focus the fact neither Skywalker's sibling was seen doing something similar in the wake of 2 far more heartbreaking losses in that first original trilogy Star Wars movie. After Luke's Uncle Owen and Aunt Beru are horrifically burned alive by stormtroopers on Tatooine, how does Luke react? By simply heading back to Ben, noting how there's now nothing for him on the desert world, and that he fancied being a Jedi. Having Luke be more cut up over the death of a guy he barely knew than the loss of the people who raised him was dumb to say the least. Then you have Leia barely reacting to the loss of not just her family but her entire home planet in the movie. The next time viewers see the princess after the Death Star destroys Alderaan, she's being rescued by Han Solo, Luke and Chewbacca, cracking jokes and blasting troopers like nothing had happened. Admittedly, she no doubt mourned the loss of her loved ones off screen, but the fact Lucas opted to not show either Skywalker taking a moment to acknowledge such devastating events feels bizarre in hindsight. Number 8. Luke forgets to use the Force. Luke Skywalker can very much be seen using the Force throughout the original trilogy, and shows off how strong he is with it a few times during Episode 6 Return of the Jedi in particular. You have that time he unleashed a super powerful and clearly intentional Force kick, and also the moments he force-pulled a blaster within Jabba's palace. However, Luke's willingness to use the Force here makes his decision not to at other points feel a little dumb in hindsight. Take the moment Skywalker finds himself up against the Rancor after that aforementioned blaster moment. Instead of using the Force to launch a rock at the gate that would eventually kill the beast, Luke decides to pick it up and chuck it like any non-Force sensitive person would. Levitating rocks is literally Jedi 101, right? Then he's seemingly unable to force pull his own lightsaber to his hands after the gang are caught in an Ewok trap, despite regularly being shown doing exactly that in the trilogy. Hanging upside down after being attacked by a Wampa, lightsaber pulling is a piece of cake. Even with less training at that point, in a mildly uncomfortable position within a net, lightsaber pulling is seemingly impossible now. How damn silly. But I want to know really quickly, what is your favourite Force moment in Star Wars? Was it Luke pulling up that blade on Hoth or something else? You let me know in the comment section down below. Number 7. What Obi-Wan said was true from a certain point of view. Oh, you just know this bad boy was going to show up at some stage. Back when George Lucas first took audiences on a trip to the galaxy far, far away, the Star Wars creator clearly hadn't decided that Darth Vader would ultimately be revealed as Luke Skywalker's father. And that's precisely why Obi-Wan Kenobi tells the young farm boy that Vader was actually the bloke who murdered his dad in Episode 4 A New Hope. In the end though, it turns out that Vader didn't actually kill Anakin Skywalker, he was him! And if that's a spoiler at this point, what are you doing with your life? On the back of Luke learning the truth, it was clear that Obi-Wan had some explaining to do. But said explanation in Episode 6 Return of the Jedi was ultimately all kinds of dumb. Along with stating that his father stopped being Anakin when he turned to the dark side, and that the good man who was your father was destroyed after that, Kenobi then had the audacity to claim that the blatant lie he told Luke was actually true from a certain point of view. Would it have really been that difficult to just admit that he lied about his dad to protect Luke from the truth? From every point of view, Kenobi's comments are just a stupid way to make it look like he wasn't a massive liar. Number 6. The complicated plan to save Han Solo. Sticking with that final original trilogy movie, this Richard Marquand directed episode kicks off with the heroes attempting to rescue Han Solo from Jabba the Hutt's palace on Tatooine. But the team's plan to get their smuggler pal out of that location alive was an odd one, to put it mildly. In the wake of 3PO, R2, Leia, and Chewbacca all being captured during their attempts to free Solo, all while Lando Calrissian remained undercover as one of Jabba's guards, Luke Skywalker eventually showed up and ordered the space slug to release his mates. That obviously didn't go completely to plan either, with Skywalker soon being forced to fight the Rancor before being captured and sentenced to death by Sarlacc. But Luke and the squad then managed to fight their way out of trouble in the end, thanks to Skywalker secretly stashing his lightsaber in R2-D2 beforehand. Whatever way you look at it, this grand rescue plan was incredibly convoluted and contained a ton of unnecessary steps. Did Luke really need to put his other friends in danger if he was always just going to arrive and use his Jedi powers to get Han out of there? Probably not. But the complicated plan made for an entertaining, if consistently baffling, ride at least. Sure was funny. Cheers for checking out this video today. Check out more great What Culture Star Wars lists and more by tapping on that subscribe button down below. Number 5. Boba Fett's death. While on the subject of that perplexing Episode 6 Return of the Jedi rescue mission, it was this sequence which also contained one of the dumbest deaths in Star Wars history too, as Luke, Han and Chewie fight their way out of trouble on a skiff floating above the Sarlacc. The coolest bounty hunter in the galaxy enters the battle, setting up an intriguing showdown with the powerful Jedi. However, right when it looked like this duel was about to get interesting, with Boba Fett getting ready to fire a rocket at Skywalker, what happened? Rather than being taken out by an awesome lightsaber swing or shot down by another one of our heroes, Fett was accidentally smacked by a partially blind Solo after the smuggler learned that the Beskar-wearing icon was nearby. From here, Fett is sent flying through the air as his jetpack malfunctions, screaming like a silly goof before being seemingly eaten alive by the monster below. Such an effortlessly cool villain undoubtedly deserved a more badass ending than this. But the call was made to have Boba quote-unquote die in one of the dumbest ways imaginable instead. At least it wasn't forever, eh? Number 4. The Empire refused to use their lifeform detector again. Early on in Episode 4, A New Hope, there's a moment there when the Empire was shown to be able to scan for life forms on spacecraft, as 3PO and R2 crashed down to Tatooine in an escape pod. The fact the Imperial officers chose not to destroy that vessel simply because it didn't contain a living being was already rather dumb, it must be said. But there was arguably an even more foolish scanning moment still to come. You see, when the Millennium Falcon is pulled onto the Death Star via tractor beam later on, it's quickly reported that, according to its log, the ship's crew had apparently abandoned ship after takeoff. Not fully satisfied with that report, Vader then orders a scanning team be sent onto the freighter to search every inch of it. Rather than depend on a bunch of hopeless stormtroopers and officers here, wouldn't it have been easier to just use that same lifeform scanning tech that could detect beings from outside the ship seen earlier in the film? Now sure, you could possibly argue that the smuggling compartment Han crammed the team into to hide from the Empire may have been able to keep lifeforms from being found on those scanners. But Solo's comments on never thinking he'd chuck himself into one of them seems to suggest he'd never tested whether that would even work. Had Vader just ordered his squad to scan it from the outside upon the Falcon's arrival, the Empire could have gotten their hands on the Death Star plans there and then, the silly gooses. Number 3. Ewoks take down the Emperor's troops. Look, no one is saying that these little balls of fury weren't brave and rather innovative souls. They did use everything from massive log traps to gliding devices to combat the Empire on Endor, don't forget. But it's still tough to accept that the teddy bear rebel allies known as the Ewoks would have really been able to hold their own against the Emperor's best troops, equipped with blasters, walkers, and speed bikes towards the end of Episode 6, Return of the Jedi. And the minute the Ewoks show up to assist Han, Leia, and the rest of the rebels trying to blow up the Death Star 2 shield generator on the forest moon, a wonderfully intense sequence quickly turns into a quite surreal and silly ground war. It's evident why George Lucas wanted these savage furballs included in the picture to begin with. He wanted to move some cute toys and merchandise, right? But their inclusion as the major reason the rebels were able to blow up the shield generator during their mission to take down the second Death Star, instead of the originally planned Wookiees, just made a big chunk of the trilogy's final act feel jarringly cartoonish. Number 2. Leia remembers her mother and smooches her brother. Initially, the scene involving Luke Skywalker and Leia Organa talking about the fact they had actually been twins throughout the entire original trilogy seemed like quite a compelling exchange. The galaxy's favorite princess noted how she could remember little things about her late mother, before Obi-Wan's apprentice revealed that Darth Vader was their daddy, and his sister sat in front of him possessed the power of the Force too. And it's after that last revelation when Leia states how she's actually always known that Luke was her brother. While that line may have looked good on paper though, it quickly felt like a bit of a dumb/strange thing to say, given the fact Leia had happily smooched her bro a few times on screen before this chat. Leia's comments about remembering her mother Padme Amidala didn't end up aging all that well either, with the prequels eventually showing that the former Queen of Naboo died in childbirth. Perhaps those images of her mum were simply Force visions, but in reality Lucas just decided to retcon this particular moment when it came time to shoot the prequels, and that call ultimately made this particular Episode 6 statement seem a bit odd in hindsight. Number 1. All of the terrible George Lucas Special Edition changes. Right away, it's important to note that not every single change George Lucas insisted on making to the original trilogy over the years was entirely dreadful, stupid, or ridiculous. Some of those re-release alterations actually very much enhanced the films, like the call to take away Anakin's eyebrows during his demasking moment, or the addition of a comical sound effect as a stormtrooper accidentally whacked its head. Oh, how we laughed. However, for every welcome change, there were sadly many other updates in these re-releases that were seriously unnecessary. The stuffing of way too many pointless CGI extras into certain locations, adding in of a dodgy-looking digital Jabba the Hutt on Mos Eisley, ridiculous way Greedo was made to shoot first, horrendous Cy Snoodles Jedi Rocks tune, and so many other dumb adjustments just left a bad taste in many a Star Wars lover's mouths. In trying to improve his movies, Lucas largely just made them a far more jarring experience. And the less said about blinking Ewoks and Vader's dodgy Death Star, no, the better too. What was he thinking?